name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. The following is an audiobook called Watchful Elders from Father Kilian Hennrich. As our children's souls are under constant attack, may this book provide a guide in helping you to guard their purity. In summary, two things that the book hit on in the early part is that teaching the child, instilling in them the appreciation of the daily joys of home life, and also practicing self-denial. Those two things act as the foundation for the wall, which would be the wall to guard their purity against impurity. So those are good things, and as always, turning to the Blessed Mother and also the guardian angel, and keeping up with frequent sacraments. So that's the foundation for the wall of for purity. Beyond that, it also stresses that sex education is never to be done in public or with a group setting, and always individually, because each individual kid is different. And also it stresses on the duty of the parents to fulfill their obligation in being the one to educate the children. If there's an issue with that, maybe they can turn to the confessor, but it should definitely not be anybody beyond that unless it's really trusted. And it breaks down for the parent in conversations, as far as conversations and how the wording would go with first young children versus boys and girls, and then for young men and young women. And then the book ends with it ends on the treatment of difficult cases. So at its conclusion, I also added a few minutes about the author, Father Kilian Hennrich, and that's all. So hopefully the book can be efficacious for your souls and the souls of your children. Watchful Elders, a word to parents and educators about educating children to purity. Reverend Kilian J. Hennrich. Imprimatur, Patrick Cardinal Hayes, Archbishop of New York, New York, New York, February 19, 1929. To the reader. The contents of this booklet are based on two publications issued by the Catholic School Organization in Dusseldorf, both by unknown authors. It was thought practical to combine the two, one for boys and one for girls, into one, since much of the matter is identical for both sexes, and since boys and girls are found in most families. The matter has been adapted to our conditions, as has been somewhat condensed in order that the booklet might find the greatest possible number of readers, and so produce greater results. It is intended for private instructions only. Public sex instructions cannot be advocated. Their results are positively harmful. Parents, confessors, educators, and physicians will find the following pages useful and practical in the difficult task of properly guiding the young in a problem that is as universal as it is delicate. Nevertheless, it must not be inferred that because this vice is found among all classes, all boys and girls are more or less impure. It is beyond doubt that the millions of children and adolescents, owing to the grace of God, lead a truly angelic life. Nor should one be misled and believe that knowledge alone will preserve or advance virtue. This is not the case, although a materialistic world thinks so. It is but a natural means, valuable only as an addition to the supernatural means of grace. That knowledge alone is not sufficient is clearly shown by examples of men and women mentioned in Holy Scripture who had the knowledge but failed miserably in practicing the virtue. Although this booklet is not intended for sale in places where its buyers cannot be controlled, it will serve well on mission stands, in retreat houses, and rectories where it may be distributed to those for whom it is intended. Father Kilian. Introduction. This booklet is intended to be of service to instructors in general and to parents in particular in the education of children. If you are one of them, the words that follow are addressed to you. No doubt you are anxious to promote the welfare of your children, and you know that the greatest enemy seeking to devastate the paradise of their souls is the vice of impurity, which is preached both in public and in hidden places. to offset the insidious influence of immoral information that will eventually reach a large number of young people. It is one of the main reasons for publishing this treatise. Many parents would gladly assist their children in their peculiar struggles if they but knew how to go about it. These pages will tell them what to do in such cases. The booklet is not intended to be read by the children. It should be kept away from them, lest reading it at the wrong time or without the adaptation of a reliable guide, they may suffer some harm instead of being benefited. However, there should not be too much fear of great harm, because children who have not yet become inquisitive will not read this booklet, and those who will read it perhaps already have received information from doubtful sources. This booklet contains everything average children and adolescents might be told until the time comes when they earnestly consider the establishment of a family. It does not contain the instruction usually given by the pastor before marriage, but it may contain even too much for certain children. Parents themselves must decide what is necessary and sufficient for the particular child. It is not possible to lay down a general rule applicable to all, since the children and their needs vary greatly. Dear parents, these pages should be a guide to you, but should not prevent you from using means that seem better. Talents differ greatly. Read this booklet quietly and attentively. Speak to your child at a time which you consider most favorable. First, offer a prayer, and then say what you think to be opportune and necessary in a simple, plain, and natural manner. Fear may be, in this case, a temptation of Satan. Should you, however, after reading the instructions, not feel able to impart the needed information, do not leave the child in darkness. Be a guardian angel and lead your child in time to someone who enjoys your confidence. Consult others who are in a position to advise you. Such an advisor may be a priest, a teacher, a relative, or under certain conditions, a conscientious physician. May Christ, the divine friend of children, who loves your children exceedingly, bless your endeavors in this field, in order that they at least may retain the treasure of a pure and undefiled youth. Chapter 1. Sex Education in General. True sex education can be accomplished only in union with a complete Christian education. Education to purity, although an important part of education, is, nevertheless, but one part, and perhaps not even the most important one. It must form an integral part of moral education from earliest years, and cannot be postponed until sex reveals itself plainly to the growing child. Sex instruction plays but a small role in sex education. It has but a minor part in the education to purity. What is meant by sex instruction? Not all give the same definition. We may consider it to mean the teaching of the psychical and physical changes connected with the propagation of mankind. But it should not be forgotten that something else is needed, and this seems to be of greater importance, namely the proper formation of the conscience of the growing child. The child must learn to know what is forbidden and how far the sixth commandment extends. He must know what is a grievous sin and what is not. But a pure and chaste child is not formed by revealing it the secrets of sex life. Experience teaches that, notwithstanding the deepest knowledge, the basest perversion may prevail. It must be kept in mind that knowledge, as such, does not afford the least protection against sin. St. Thomas Aquinas remarks that for a created mind, naturally limited in its capacity, knowledge may be a source of vice as well as of virtue. Instruction calls attention to things that may constitute a danger for those who hear them but do not hurt the ignorant. Of greater importance than sex knowledge is the correct valuation of this phase of life, and it is of the utmost importance to act accordingly and persistently. Hence, the training of the will and the character form the basis for sex education. This training comprises several things. First of all, a child must learn self-denial. It must simply refuse to do what is forbidden. This is of great importance at the present time with its abnormal quest for pleasure and its unbridled passion for immoral satisfaction. Children, too, are caught in these nets of Satan. The atmosphere that surrounds them, Whatever reaches their senses and the very air they breathe is saturated with the germs of lust. Hence, no education will be successful unless it teaches self-denial, and the will to refuse to do not only that which is directly sinful, but also some things that might be allowed. Christian wisdom always laid great stress on self-denial, and this should again become a virtue of youth. Particularly, a boy should be taught that being good merely because the gang is in no mischief is not real self-denial. He must learn at the earliest moment the importance of being independent of even the gang in questions of right and wrong. But the education of the will must still go deeper. It must impress upon the soul of the child a great ideal, inspiring and vivid. This ideal must be so real that it comes at once to the mind of the child when it is needed. In the moment of temptation, the question to be decided is, am I willing to sacrifice my greatest possession for a short pleasure, or rather retain it by sacrificing a few moments of lust? It is not necessary to prove by many words that the power for making the right decision in this single and all-important question can come from no other source than religion. In sex education, the cultivation of the emotions must accompany the training of the will. A child, in order to develop the necessary happy disposition, must have the sunshine of joy. Unfortunately, very often the shadows of sorrow linger over the years of childhood, leaving an unfavorable impression. Many parents would provide for their children more happiness if they knew how. Economic and living conditions, surroundings and neighbors make this, like many other things, seemingly impossible, but only seemingly so. If parents earnestly strive to cultivate among their children a taste for the little joys of daily life, there will be no danger of want of sunshine in their youth. The children of today sometimes demand too much, and unfortunately most parents provide too many artificial enjoyments. This brings about the reaction of coldness and a lack of appreciation of the simple and beautiful in home life and the feeling of happiness that follows an act of domestic virtue. Without these amenities, life may become almost unbearable. A return to the domestic joys is needed. Hence, parents who desire to influence the moral life of their children effectively must constantly direct their taste to appreciate the little joys of daily family life. Sex life is closely connected with the functions and development of the human organism. A reasonable care of the body forms an essential part of sex education. Correct diet, cleanliness, exercises, games, sports, athletics, walks, and from time to time also strenuous exercises and activities are absolutely necessary for children of the present time. The Jesuits follow the principle of letting the boys roam around and play so much in the evening that they are exhausted and fall asleep immediately. Of course, Christian parents are not in favor of overdoing things along these lines, nor do they approve of the modern custom as of much nakedness as possible during certain exercises. These exercises do more harm than good, and instead of strengthening the character of the child, weaken it in the fight against its strongest enemy. In passing, it may be remarked that the habit of cigarette smoking, which harms the body and excites the passion, should be energetically suppressed. Although everything possible has been done to train the character of the child, it should not needlessly be exposed to temptations which it may not be able to withstand. Conditions make it almost impossible to keep away from the child everything that may prove harmful. Still, our children, owing to the fact that they can hear and see so many things, seemingly suffer thereby less harm than the children of former days. They must, however, be taught very early to see and judge things correctly. The evil influences to be kept away from the children are many. Even when the children are mere babies, the parents will avoid everything that should not come to the notice of older children. It is often said that small children do not understand these things. This is true, but the impressions remain and may lead to very undesirable thoughts in later life. It is evident that reading and companionship of children need careful supervision. What is presented in newspapers, illustrated sections, moving pictures, and theaters is frequently so sensual that nothing but a special grace of God will protect the child from serious harm. But these natural means will not be sufficiently powerful unless the child is made truly religious. The fostering of piety, far removed from sentimentalism as well as from cold reasoning, must be the educator's principal concern. All other things may be giant strides, but not in the right direction. Sex desires are much too strong to be kept in bounds with threats and talks about physical consequences. Ethical means will never protect children against sexual aberrations unless the warmth of deep piety permeates the soul, unless the thought that God sees them, that a happy or wretched eternity depends on their selection, and that our relationship with God, our Father, may be destroyed by giving way to temptation is constantly and vividly before their minds. Nothing else will avail. These thoughts must be cultivated in order to form the strongest wall around the sex life of children which no flood of temptations can wash away. How different would conditions be if children would realize that they are children of God? How quickly would they banish everything low and degrading? But unless God assists with His grace, all human labor and care is in vain. The child must pray daily for the gift of purity. The parents must lead the child early and frequently to the sacraments in order that the divine friend of children Himself may take the little ones under His protection. Cultivate in the children a true love and devotion toward Mary. It has not been heard that a true child of Mary has been lost forever. Parents will remember that the success of education depends entirely on the blessing of God. Hence, they will not neglect to pray daily for the grace their children need and will add the good example of a truly Christian life. They will have a special devotion toward the guardian angels of their children and will ask them to watch where no human eye nor ear can penetrate. If parents have labored in this way for the general education of their children, they have also done what is essential in the education to purity without having, perhaps, uttered the name of that virtue or of the opposing vice. Chapter 2. Watchful Elders. Some Guiding Principles. Sex education will not result in much good unless it proceeds along definite lines. What has been said so far should not lead to the conclusion that it is never desirable or necessary to speak plainly about sex matters. No, but before making an attempt to show how this may be done, a few more thoughts should be presented. Sex instruction is but a small part of sex education. Nevertheless, when imparting it, some certain principles should be kept in mind. Number 1. As long as a child can be kept ignorant about sex matters, it should not be instructed regarding them. The child lives in the innocence of paradise. Why should this state be destroyed by untimely remarks? Sex education should try to preserve innocence by guiding away from sex. The passions can become like a wild animal which has tasted blood and will not desist until it has satisfied its desire. The more successful the parents are in keeping away from the mind of the child sexual thoughts and desires, the better it is. Number 2. If, however, there is danger that a child will receive harmful and wrong information from improper sources, it becomes the duty of the parents to speak. It is better to do this a little too early than one moment too late. Number 3. The question of how and when to impart sex information cannot be solved according to standard forms. There is a difference in time and also in the manner in which the instruction should be given. As a rule, it will be better to explain matters gradually instead of giving complete information at once. Much depends upon the relationship that exists between the instructor and the child. Also, upon the age, sex, experience, and the character of the child to be instructed. Number 4. From these principles, the following deductions may be drawn. A public sex instruction, in school or elsewhere, should never be given because the individuality of each child cannot be considered under such circumstances. There are cases when it is necessary to instruct a child of 10 years or even less and there are also cases in which children need no particular instruction until they have reached adolescence. There is no doubt that school and church must cooperate with the home, but except in extremely rare public scandals, this cooperation must confine itself to the inculcation and promotion of virtue rather than the exposition of vice. B. Sex information imparted at the wrong time may produce more harm than good. It may perplex the child and may lead to grievous sins and bad habits difficult to overcome later on. C. Hence, there should exist an intimate and confidential relationship between the instructor and the child. Those only who know the tenderest and innermost aspirations of the young human heart will be able to sense the right moment. Chapter 3, Watchful Elders, a Difficult Duty. The discussion of the guiding principles in sex instruction indicates that it is a most difficult task. This most probably is the main reason why only few young people receive sex information from those who are called by God to impart it. An extensive investigation, if it were possible, might reveal that not 5% receive this information from their father or mother. Most boys and girls satisfy their curiosity from doubtful sources. Priests, who, owing to their office, may look into the hearts of the young, learn with horror what destruction a brutal method of information may cause. But one example may find a place here. A retreat master relates the following occurrence. One day a boy called me. He was visibly excited and in a depressed frame of mind. After having been encouraged to talk, he said, "Father, is it true that my parents do such things together as some companions told me? For 3 months I have visited the church daily and have prayed from the bottom of my heart that it might not be true." What an anguish do these words reveal! But after the priest had explained to him in simple words the secret of the origin of life as viewed by Christians, the boy embraced him and wept for joy that this worry had been taken from him. Dear parents, do not the words of this boy constitute an indictment of fathers and mothers who neglect to cultivate in the hearts of their children the spirit of confidence, and who never speak a word to them because they consider it improper to mention such things? Girls, too, may suffer from ignorance in sex matters. Occasionally the priest is asked about sex matters, or he may deduct from remarks that such information is wanted and needed in order to prevent moral disaster. He, of course, will tell the girl that God ordained these things, and that since she is now so far developed, she may know about them. He will add that these things are so intimate that it is really the task of her mother to speak to her about them. He may tell her to go and ask her mother, mentioning the advice of the priest. But behold, in 95% of such cases, he will receive the reply, "I could never talk to my mother about such things." And asked, why not? The answer would most probably be, "My mother would not understand me," or, "I asked her once and she was surprised, looked at me indignantly, and gave me a brisk and short reply." Happy the priest who, under such circumstances, can find a trustworthy woman who is able and willing to enlighten the girl about those things which, if they remain unexplained, may constitute a source of endless worry and anxiety. Such pastoral experiences prove that many parents do not know how to fulfill this difficult obligation of their state of life. Indeed, many parents are glad if they are not asked to furnish information. Many a parent feels like the mother who confessed, "I had sleepless nights full of fear and anguish, and have prayed much that my child would never come to me and ask about these things." It is readily understood that parents have special reasons for avoiding a talk with their children about sex matters. Natural shame has covered sex life with the veil of mystery, and well-bred people do not wish to lift it without necessity. Much less are those inclined to make revelations who are actually concerned in the matter. The difficulty is real, it is great. Nevertheless, a wrong conception of modesty must lie at the bottom of it all. Shame is something beautiful and valuable, something which not only children but also adults should possess and cultivate. but its only result should be that people do not discuss sex matters without reason. Sex life is nothing bad in itself. It was created by God like everything else. And God saw all the things that he made, and they were very good. The body, with all its parts, is good. Hence, none of its parts should be called bad in the sense that they are not good. The fact that the mystery of generation and the genital organs are so often abused and are often the occasion of much baseness and vulgarity may, indeed, arouse the idea that they are something low in themselves, but that is not the correct conception. Holy Scripture speaks repeatedly, and sometimes plainly, yet very reverently, about the mystery of life. Whenever it wishes to express the close relationship between God and the chosen people in all its fullness and tenderness, it knows no better simile than courtship and marriage. It is therefore necessary to free ourselves by pious meditation from the notion that the exercise of the rites of matrimony is something low and disgraceful. The truth is that it is a participation in the act of creation. God creates the soul only if the parents fulfill the conditions for the production of the body. Thus only can God fill heaven with saints. Can there be anything vulgar in that? Sex life must be looked upon through the eyes of God. He sees everything he made as good and holy. If parents would view the matter in such a manner, they would free themselves from the shackles which hinder them and close their mouths. They would conquer, too, great reticence, which is a temptation of Satan. Parents are bound in conscience to assist their children during the difficult period of adolescence. However, many do not know and much less realize the dangers that surround their children. They ought to examine the so-called sex information literature that travels from hand to hand among the pupils of our grammar and high schools. What destruction does it cause? How many an innocent boy and unsuspecting girl have lost by reading it the precious virtue of purity and become sick both in soul and body. Most parents do not know how greatly their children are tempted nowadays. Statisticians give us figures about the spread of venereal diseases that are staggering. Public educators are at a loss what to do to stem the flood of immorality. Crime and character studies have been made. Character training methods have been outlined and tried. But gradually, educators have begun to doubt the efficacy of all natural means to obtain betterment. Vice and sexual aberrations continue to increase. Now that public educators fail, it is the duty of parents to aid in bettering the conditions. They must do so, otherwise their children may one day demand from them the innocence of their heart which they lost through the sinful neglect of their otherwise loving parents. It is not necessary to exaggerate. Things are too serious for that. But it is necessary to talk plainly and forcefully. If father or mother are themselves really not able to say the right word at the right time, they should, at least, do all they can in order that someone in whom they have confidence may, in their name, tell young people what they must know for their own protection. Chapter 4. Watchful Elders. Sex Instruction. From the consideration of the general principles, we proceed to their application. It has been remarked that sex education embraces two fields, the formation of conscience and the imparting of information about the physical and psychical changes connected with the procreation of man. Hence, the formation of the conscience regarding the sex life will be considered first. The precious gift of God. It is a natural quality that must be developed into the virtue of modesty. In trying to solve this problem, parents frequently make clear in the mind of the child that every imperfection against modesty is a mortal sin. If you do that, you will go to hell, says an imprudent mother to a child who is not properly, especially when educating children. Although it is necessary from time to time to call the attention of children to the presence of God and the guardian angel, exaggeration is wrong and harmful. The teaching of the following verse is productive of more good. Wherever, child, you may abide, remember God is at your side. An eye there is whose look so bright sees all you do by day and night. The reason why such mistakes are made by parents lies frequently in the fact that parents themselves have no clear conception of what is sinful in this matter and what is not. This confusion may have been caused by the statement found in catechisms that every sin against the sixth commandment is, by its nature, a mortal sin. This, however, is true only of sins against purity, sins of lust committed willfully and with full knowledge of their wickedness. Sins against modesty, being mostly proximate or remote occasions of sin, must be distinguished from sins of impurity. Modesty is a virtue which protects purity, but is not purity itself. The sixth commandment, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," forbids willful sexual pleasures outside of matrimony. Hence, everything done with the intention of eliciting sexual lust and every full consent given to this lust is a mortal sin. It is equally sinful if one does or permits things, although one knows that such thoughts or actions will naturally arouse lust, unless one has sufficient reason to risk the danger. All these things are sins against purity. The virtue of modesty forbids all unnecessary engagements, thoughts, words, touches, looks, with parts of the body that stand in close relationship with sex life. Such unnecessary engagements may easily and frequently do constitute a grave danger for the virtue of purity. Hence, education to modesty must have a twofold objective. First, it must accustom the child not to pamper its body unnecessarily. Things pertaining to health, cleanliness, etc., should be done with indifference as being natural. The second objective to be reached requires that the virtue of modesty rest on solid ground. Things that are, perhaps, venial sins should not be called mortal sins, nor should a child be caused to fear its own body. This would be decidedly harmful. It differs greatly from the holy respect and reverence which a child should have for its body. The human body is the most wonderful production and visible creation. It is sanctified by the sacraments, consecrated as a temple of the Holy Ghost, and destined for a glorious everlasting life. The growing child must gradually be led into a more comprehensive formation of conscience. Meanwhile, the fact must not be overlooked that unspoiled children of tender age do not, as a rule, commit grievous sins against the sixth commandment. Practically all their sins in this field will be those opposed to the virtue of modesty. This, however, should not lead the parent or educator to minimize the importance of the virtue of modesty. On the contrary, it should increase it, especially nowadays. At present, particular care is needed in order that, on the one hand, a false prudery may not cause unnecessary worry, and, on the other hand, the child may be fortified against the modern cult of nakedness which destroys the wall that protects the virtue of purity. Sometimes it will be quite difficult to impart to a girl a clear idea of what is impure. The unspoiled girl, having no temptations from within, has no experience in this matter. For such a girl, it is as difficult to get a correct conception of sins against purity as it is for the blind to form an idea about the beauty of a painting. One has to be extremely careful in explaining matters, otherwise attention will be called to things that were hidden and should remain hidden for a long time to come. In most cases, a negative instruction will be possible and sufficient. A clear idea of what is improper and immodest may be given, and the warning may be added that everything that goes beyond this is impure. Parents will, therefore, warn against all impropriety and immodesty without overdoing things, and will remark that the loss of shame and modesty will inevitably lead to grievous sins against purity. These sins will rob the girl of her greatest treasure. It will be much easier to explain sex life to girls who have had bad experiences, but owing to their youth, it will generally speaking be the duty of the confessor to impart the necessary information, since these girls will rarely reveal their experiences to parents or others who are fit and competent to advise them. Number 2, individual talks. More difficult than the formation of conscience is the actual instruction in sex matters. This instruction must be perfectly adapted to the needs of the individual child and should be imparted gradually. In other words, no instruction is opportune unless the child asks questions of this nature, or the parent foresees that, unless information is given, bad companions or diabolical grown-ups will ruin the purity of the child. Verbal instructions should be the rule. Only in cases in which this is not possible, printed information may be provided. But even in these cases, a discussion should follow the reading of the book. The following outlines may offer suggestions to the instructor. A. For younger children. Actual instruction of younger children must confine itself to the cultivation of modesty. Not many words are needed. The mother will accustom the child to habits of cleanliness and will teach it to keep clean. She will remind the child of the sanctity of the human body and will insist upon keeping it properly covered unless there is an evident reason to discard clothing on account of sickness or the preservation of health. She will provide sufficient privacy for dressing and undressing of children of different sexes. The advice of some to let the young boys and girls get acquainted with the difference in sex organs during the period of their innocence is not sound and will surely lead to grave temptations during adolescence. Failure to observe modesty in words and actions should not be left unheeded. Boys and girls who have reached the use of reason should not sleep together. Soon or later, the time will come when the child will ask, "Where do the babies come from?" or a similar question. At first, the mother will try to lead away from the topic by speaking about something else. Should the child repeat the question, it must be considered as a sign that it busies itself with the matter. In this case, the answer will simply be, "Babies come from the good God." Most youngsters will be satisfied with this answer, at least for some time. Some will inquire further by asking, "How does God make them?" Eventually, the mother may say, "My dear child, that is a great secret. No one knows just how he does it. God lets the trees and the animals grow, and nobody knows how he does it. But we know that the good God loves all things he makes. He loves you too, because you are his child, and he is your Father in heaven." Should the child continue its questioning, the mother may add, "You know how much I love you. Do you know why? Long before you were born, God let you grow near to my heart. There, the good God had prepared a small cradle in which you rested until you were able to live alone. And then he gave you to me, and your father and we were happy to have you." Well-trained children will be satisfied with such a truthful answer. It is not necessary to resort to fables, although they could not be called lies. They belong to the poetry of childhood. It is of the greatest importance that a mother answer the questions of her child without excitement, fear, or hesitation. Simplicity and naturalness will convince. A child is very observant and will notice immediately if a mother dislikes its questions and suspicion is aroused. An unspoiled child may ask some more simple questions, but they will be of minor importance and easily answered. B. For boys. Between the 12th and 15th year, the asking of questions regarding sex matters will start again. During these years, a boy needs special help. He notices changes in mind and body. A new world reveals itself to him. Many things are mysterious and puzzle him. If he could but explain what it all means. If he could but find someone who understands him. Such and similar questions agitate his brain. Self-consciousness awakens. The boy becomes sensitive and shy. He suffers sometimes intensely from the fight between highest idealism and powerlessness to realize it. To this is added the changes brought about by physical and mental development. Sex consciousness becomes real. All at once the boy grows rapidly. The first fine hair appears upon the upper lip and the voice starts to break. The arms and legs grow out of proportion and a certain awkwardness sets in. The surplus strength looks for an outlet and causes many tricks and disorders. It is the last skirmish before the real battle of life. Now the spirit must attain the mastery over the body, and lucky the boy who finds a strong guide who will help him to tame the body without breaking down the splendid spirit. During the years of development, some boys will ask their confessor for advice because watchful parents advise them to do so. Others, unfortunately, will talk to such companions whom they know not to be strict observers of the sixth commandment. This is, as a rule, the end of the virtue of purity. It could have been prevented, in many cases at least, if the father had done his duty by instructing his son. He could have done this by taking him out for a walk in God's nature and speaking to him along the following lines. Son, you are growing into a big boy and begin to look down upon your younger brothers and sisters and other boys and girls. I suppose you do not just know what to do with your long legs and arms. Don't worry, that will regulate itself soon. You may notice other peculiar changes in other parts of your body. This should not disquiet you. God created them for a special purpose like the rest of the body, and these manifestations are according to His will. They are the natural consequence of the development of your body. All you have to do is to let them alone. As soon as you willfully entertain impure thoughts or endeavor to bring about or promote impure feelings, you commit serious interior and exterior sins against purity. You will surely fall into a sinful habit that will make you a slave of the passion of lust. I wish to protect you against such a vice. Be on your guard. Banish all impure thoughts. Shun all playing or fumbling with your own body or that of other boys, and do not suffer anyone to touch you improperly. If this happens against your will, report it. Play hard, enjoy walks, take part in athletics. Do not neglect your regular duties, and do not forget to pray daily. Remember God and your heavenly Mother. It may happen that all kinds of bad thoughts enter your mind, or that dreams come during the night about things which you would abhor during daytime. Don't worry. Occupy yourself during the day with other matters, and avoid everything that might give food to bad thoughts. Practice noble, joyful, and useful thoughts. In the evening, when your imagination is strongest, bridle your thoughts and desires. A pure mind and an undefiled body should be your guiding principle. Dreams need not frighten you. Even if the body should give way and nature relieve itself in consequence of their influence, do not become discouraged. These are merely signs that you have entered manhood. It is not always easy to resist all temptations, but it is possible. You are a strong boy and a noble lad. You will gladly fight like a young knight to retain the treasure of purity. Your guardian angel will fight at your side, and believe me, your Father will assist you. Perhaps you have heard people say that it is not possible to lead a pure and innocent life. This is true only if we had to rely on our own strength, and did not believe and hope in aid from above, otherwise not. If you are watchful, do not expose yourself needlessly to danger, and make good use of the means of grace with which God supplies you abundantly. You will fight joyfully and victoriously. The most beautiful ornament of youth, the virtue of purity, will be your prize and your crown. In the case the boy inquires seriously about the origin of babies, or if the father notices that his son occupies himself with this question, or if there is reason to fear that the boy may receive harmful information from other sources, it is time to continue the instruction. My dear boy, you must have noticed that we pray in the Hail Mary, "Blessed is the fruit of thy womb." These words were spoken to Mary by Elizabeth at a time when the Christ child had not yet been born. He was still resting under the heart of his mother, where he grew from a tiny cell into a fully developed baby. You, too, have rested for 9 months below the heart of your mother in a small cradle which God had prepared for you. No doubt your mother told you this long ago. A narrow passage leads from this cradle to the outside world. When you were fully developed so as to be able to live separately, you wandered through this narrow passage. This was very painful for your mother, and many a mother has given her life in bringing forth her child. That is the reason why a mother has such a great love for her children, more than anyone else could have. I remember what a happiness it was for your mother when she held you in her arms for the first time and kissed you, although she was still weak from pain. But she loved you already before you were born. As soon as she knew that you were growing in her womb, she began to pray that you might be born safely and might grow up and remain a good child. And when she saw you, you became at once the joy and sunshine of her life. She nourished you for many months with the milk the good God had prepared in her breast. It was part of her blood she gave you that enabled you to grow into a healthy and strong boy. What a respect you ought to have for your mother and for every woman God has called to motherhood. There are boys who make fun or crack jokes about mothers whom God has blessed with an unborn child. This state is called pregnancy or with child. Such boys reveal thereby their baseness of their character. No well-bred boy will do anything of this kind. You love your mother and appreciate all she has done for you. Now consider quietly what I have told you. You may and should do that. And if something should strike you that you do not yet understand, come and ask me, and I shall explain things to you as well as I can. The father who has spoken in this or a similar way to his son may experience that from that time on, the boy shows more reverence and a still greater love for his mother. More than once has such a confidential heart-to-heart talk changed a young rascal into a perfect gentleman in his dealings with his mother and the other sex in general. The father will add that the boy should not talk about these things which God made so wonderfully great and holy. He should keep them as a cherished secret and should not ask information from anyone except from his father or confessor. It should be impressed upon the boy that every decent person covers these mysteries with deepest silence. It may happen that a boy, when being instructed, interposes indignantly that he does or thinks nothing that is wrong. This should not determine the father to discontinue his talk. No positive conclusions can be drawn from such utterances of boys. C. For girls. A critical period in the life of a girl, as far as sex is concerned, sets in with the appearance of the first signs of menstruation. It is hard to understand why some mothers leave their daughters entirely in the dark about its meaning and significance. In consequence of this neglect, many a girl is filled with great fear and anguish. Some consult physicians without the knowledge of their parents because they imagine their health to be in a serious condition. All this could be avoided if the mother would use this opportunity to foster confidence and to enlighten the understanding of her child. There's nothing for which a child is more thankful than for the right word at the right time. What should a mother say when she notices that her daughter has entered into this stage of physical development? Should she keep silent until asked? It may happen that a girl will confidently reveal her condition to her mother, but more frequently she will keep silent for a long time. In this case, the mother herself must make the approach to the subject. She knows when it is time. She may say something like the following: My dear child, what happens to you at present should not worry you. It is perfectly natural, even healthy, and shows that you are ceasing to be a little girl. God arranged and created your body that way for good reasons. This thing will happen from now on about once a month. Hence it is called menstruation, or a monthly period. Girls say, as a rule, I am not feeling well. As long as these periods recur regularly, you are in a good condition, but every irregularity should be reported to me immediately. It may be that during these periods your good humor leaves you, and that you become easily excited, but a well-bred girl knows how to control herself. She feels proud if nobody notices any difference in her behavior. During these days you must be careful not to expose yourself to catching a cold by overheating yourself in work or play. A cold may cause serious disorders. To keep your body perfectly clean is of great importance. You may wash yourself with perfect quietness of conscience, and if you do not know what to do or how to act, ask me and I shall teach you. As a rule, this period arouses within the girl a desire to learn something about the origin of babies. A properly educated child will naturally ask the mother for information, but she may be too shy or too afraid to do so. In this case, the watchful mother will read in the facial expression of the girl that the time has come to take the matter up herself. Unless she does so at the proper time, others, who are not competent or not fit to speak on so delicate a matter, will impart the looked-for information, and, no doubt, this would be decidedly harmful. It may be useful to say a little more to adolescent girls, but the activity of the father and generation should not be explained at this time unless there are serious reasons for doing so. The following may be added. My dear child, did you ever say the Hail Mary with attention? If so, did you ever stop to think that the words, Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, really mean? Perhaps you remember that I told you once that the good God prepared a small cradle for you right below my heart. There you could rest and grow until you became big, so big and so strong that you could live alone. This growing of a baby is a very mysterious process. I will explain it to you as well as I can. Near the small, pear-like cradle grow two nut-shaped glands called ovaries. In these ovaries, which are connected by a fine duct to the cradle, a very small egg is formed from which a human body may grow. It moves through the duct into the cradle called the womb, and if God does not wish that a child should be born, he does not create the soul, and a few drops of blood carry the egg out of the body. These little eggs are so small that they cannot be seen with the naked eye. Now you understand what the menstruation is. It tells you that you are slowly getting ready to become a good little mother yourself. God is preparing your body for the great dignity of motherhood. Hence, you must keep it pure and holy, and must abstain from everything that may desecrate it. As you have rested below my heart during 9 months, the holy infant Jesus rested below the heart of Mary, his mother. Perhaps you have wondered why you recite in the Apostles' Creed, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, and was born of the Virgin Mary. On Annunciation Day, Christ was made flesh, but he was not born until 9 months later. Meanwhile, Jesus lived in the small dark cradle just as you lived in it. This is the sweet secret of a mother. This condition of a mother is called pregnancy, or as good people say, she is with child, or she is in a blessed state. From this you may conclude how extremely vulgar it is if boys or girls joke about a mother whom God has so singularly blessed. They show a great lack of refinement and reveal a baseness of character by such talk. You will not imitate them. When I noticed that God had given you to me, I prayed every day that you might become a good and lovely child, and when the time came that you could live alone, I gave you to the world with great pains. You were born. You passed through the narrow passage which leads from the womb to the outside of my body. In this painful hour of delivery, a woman, called a midwife, assisted me, but often a surgeon has to be called in order to help the baby to come forth safe and sound. After you were born, I had to remain in bed for some time until my strength returned. This time is called confinement. Now, because I suffered pain before I could see and embrace you for the first time, I love you so much more sincerely than any other being can and will love you. Such a loving talk will incite love in return. Many a mother has been embraced and kissed by her child as a silent testimony of appreciation and understanding. Eventually, the mother may add the following. My dear child, the good God made all these things truly wonderfully, but he did still more. In order that you might have the proper nourishment during the first months of your existence, he produced in my breast a fluid called mother's milk. This milk is prepared so as to make the baby grow strong and healthy. How gladly did I nourish you in those days, although it was not always easy. You were my dearly beloved child, for whom I would do and suffer anything. And now let us thank God for all the great and beautiful things he made. Think about them. You may and should do that. You have heard how I can explain these things to you and so nicely and plainly. If you wish to know more, or if you do not understand something you may hear or read, just come to me and I shall tell you. Of course, what I have told you so far should remain a secret between us. Let us keep it. Let us not speak about it to others. It may again be remarked that everything should be told in a quiet and simple way without the least fear, as something self-understood. Just enough religious reflections should be added to give the talk the proper tone, and no more. D. For young women. After having received the foregoing instruction, a good and innocent girl will be satisfied for many years to come. In fact, most girls will not ask further questions before their marriage, because everything seems perfectly clear to them. With some, however, matters are different. They have heard or read something that has pierced their heart and destroyed their peace of mind. They desire to know how the child originates in the womb of the mother. What part does the father play? If the mother really enjoys the confidence of the daughter, these questions are asked, perhaps reluctantly, and if they should not be asked, the mother herself should try to elicit them. After this, the mother may refer to previous instructions and continue as follows. Dear daughter, I promise to tell you everything. Now, since you ask me this question as an intelligent girl, I will answer it gladly. No doubt you have learned in a natural history class that all life originates in small cells, whose existence and form a microscope can only reveal. The higher the development of the living being, the more wonderful these cells. You know that in order that a plant may bring forth fruit, the dust called pollen must be brought on top of the stalk in the center of the flower. This stalk is called the pistil. But the pollen does not stay on top. It enters into the canal of the pistil until it reaches the little ball at the end, which contains small white dots called egg cells. As soon as the pollen unites with these cells, they become fertile and produce seed. The process is similar with animals and also with human beings. Every baby originates from the combination of two cells. About one of these I have spoken to already. It is the little egg that grows in your body from month to month. The pollen, the fine seed which makes this little egg fertile, God lets grow in the body of the man. For this reason God created man and woman different from each other. When you were a small child, you differed already greatly from your brother. You played with your doll and took good care of it. You treated it as a mother treats a baby. Your brother too played with it, but how? He tore an arm out and threw the poor doll in a corner. You wept and he laughed. You two were different in many ways, and such was the will of God. The soul of a man differs from the soul of a woman, and the union of both will bring happy results. Severity tempered with tenderness, strength mixed with mildness, and devotion answered by love bring about the most happy union and holy companionship of matrimony. As the souls of men and women differ from each other in accidentals, so do their bodies. In two small glands in the body of the man, similar to the ovaries of the woman, except that they are attached to the outside of the body instead of being inside, the small seeds develop. When parents who love each other desire to have a child and become father and mother, these small seeds originating in the body of the man must be deposited in the womb of the woman. This happens in the most intimate union possible. The organs which God created for this purpose complement each other. The small seeds enter through the same passage through which the child is born. They go into this small cradle where they unite with the egg cells of the mother. In that very moment, Almighty God, if He so wishes, creates an immortal soul, and the little infant begins to exist, to live, and to grow. In the beginning it is very small, silent, and unnoticeable to everyone except to God and the angel who guards it. Cell is added to cell. The members of the body develop until the baby is able to exist for itself. In that small cradle, the infant is nourished with the blood of the mother. What a wonderful mystery! How pure and holy is all this! What a wonderful power did the good God give to man! He lets him take part in the divine work of creation. That is the deep significance of the mystery of the origin of human life. For this reason we must protect this power. We must fight for the virtue of holy purity in order that this fountain of life may remain clear. We women must cultivate the virtue of modesty and must have a deep respect for the great privilege of motherhood. We must realize the great responsibility we have toward the coming generation. This privilege was given to us to bring forth happy sons and daughters, children of God, destined to be happy with Him forever. This is the sublime vocation of a Christian woman and mother. A child who finds in its mother a true friend is to be congratulated. Bonds of love, sympathy, and understanding will unite both for life, and the benefit will be mutual. E. For young men. The next question that will puzzle the mind of a boy who has entered the stage of puberty will be, how does a baby originate in the womb of the mother? If parents have the confidence of their son, this question will surely be asked again. The answer will be similar to that given to the young woman. The father may say the following: Son, I promise to tell you everything that might help you to arrive at a happy and undefiled manhood. Now, since you have asked me this question as an intelligent young man, I will fulfill my promise. No doubt you have learned in the natural history class that all life originates in small cells, whose existence and form only a microscope can detect. The higher the development of the living being, the more wonderful are the cells. You know that in order that a plant may bring forth fruit, the dust called pollen must be brought on top of the stalk in the center of the flower. This stalk is called the pistil, but the pollen does not stay on top. It enters into the canal of the pistil until it reaches the little ball at the end, which contains small white dots called egg cells. As soon as the pollen unites with these cells, they become fertile and produce seed. The process is similar with animals and also with human beings. Every baby originates from the combination of two cells. The little egg cell grows in the womb of the woman from month to month. The pollen, the fine seed that makes the little egg fertile, God lets grow in your body. For this reason, God created man and woman different from each other. When you were a small boy, you differed already greatly from your sister. She played with her doll and treated it as a mother treats a baby. You did not care about a doll. You two were different in many ways, and such was the will of God. The soul of a man differs from the soul of a woman, and the union of both will bring happy results. The man's severity tempered with the woman's tenderness, his strength mixed with her mildness, and his devotion answered by her love, will bring about the most happy union, the holy companionship of matrimony. As the souls of men and women differ from each other in accidentals, so do their bodies. In two small glands in your body, similar to the ovaries of a woman in which the egg cells grow, except that they are attached to the outside of your body instead of being inside, the small seeds develop. When parents desire to have a child and become father and mother, these small seeds originating in the body of the man must be deposited in the womb of the woman. This happens in the most intimate union possible. The organs which God created for this purpose complement each other. The small seeds enter through the same passage through which the child is born. They pass into the small cradle where they unite with the egg cells of the mother. In that very moment, Almighty God, if He so wills, creates an immortal soul, and the little infant begins to exist, to live, and to grow. At first it is very small, silent, and unnoticeable to anyone except to God and the angel who guards it. Gradually the body develops until the baby is able to live by itself. Meanwhile it is nourished with the blood of the mother. How pure and holy is all of this! What a wonderful power did the good God give to man! He lets him take part in the divine work of creation. That is the deep significance of the mystery of the origin of human life. To this may be added the following admonitions. My dear son, nature is preparing you gradually for your duties toward the human family. The fine seeds that are prepared outside of the body of a man do not remain there. If they are formed, they rise up into the body and are preserved in two small receptacles. When these are filled, it happens, as I told you some time ago, that they empty themselves. This generally occurs during the night and is often accompanied by bad dreams. A pollution takes place. If such a pollution should have been brought about by one's own willful manipulation, it is a grievous sin against nature and the sixth commandment. It is an abuse of that power which the Creator gave to man for the execution of the plans of divine providence. This is a wonderful power which must be protected and retained. Hence, we must fight against our animal passions. Every victory we gain with the help of God's grace is a sign that we know and cherish this great gift, and that we realize the responsibility that rests upon man as the protector of the fountain of life of the human race. God will one day ask a man how he has shouldered this great responsibility placed upon him. Happy the young man who has found in his parent a true friend and adviser in his struggles. Bonds of love, appreciation, and understanding will unite them for life. Chapter 5. Watchful Elders. Treatment of difficult cases. Notwithstanding all care and watchfulness, it may happen that boys and girls do not get along well as far as sex life is concerned. In such cases, it is most important that parents should instruct and guide. Since most of these cases are similar with boys and girls, they may be considered in general. The prudent parent will make the proper selection. A. The solitary sin. Two problems to be solved in this connection: the prevention and the cure of the habit of masturbation and self-abuse. The best preventative means is an all-around Catholic education in home, church, and school. Such an education will strengthen the young against temptations from whatever source they may arise. Boys and girls are led into this vice mostly by scandal. Hence, parents must exercise a strict supervision over the companionship and reading of their children. Also, the whereabouts of boys and girls should be known to the father or mother. Furthermore, one must keep in mind that other things besides scandal may become a danger to virtue, like lack of cleanliness and hygiene, neglect of catarrhs, and the entering of tiny worms into the interior organ, phimosis, etc. Irrigation may be produced, and the effort to alleviate it may bring about sexual pleasure for the first time. The action may be repeated without a cause, and soon the bad habit will be acquired. How a cure of the habit may be effected cannot well be explained here. Moreover, this would be useless, since practically every case needs individual treatment. Generally speaking, it will be the duty of the confessor to apply remedies. However, a few hints may find a place here. Never discourage a weak child. On the contrary, keep on encouraging it. This is very important, since a cure may require a long treatment. Never threaten with horrible things that are going to happen, although it is entirely proper to call attention to bodily harm that may result from the indulgence of this vice, such as neurasthenia, loss of youthful complexion, loss of power of resistance against sickness, and others. But there is no reason for exaggeration. It is much more helpful to strengthen the child physically, to tire it out, to engage it in work and play, and to lead it to the overflowing fountains of grace that spring forth from religion. It may be impressed upon boys that chastity and purity are not impossible and not dangerous to health. The most distinguished physicians are in harmony about that. On the contrary, purity is not only a fountain of joy, but also a strength and health. B. Prostitutes and illegitimate children. Nowadays, it is necessary to warn young men against the vice of prostitution. These women cater frequently to mere boys and often succeed in making them fall. The father may say, "Dear son, the calling of a woman is something great, and the honor of women should be defended by every young knight like you. How terrible would it be if the knight, whose duty is to defend pure women, should become their corrupter? But there are girls and women who have lost their honor and dignity. Poor unhappy creatures! They have fallen so low as to sell their virtue to lustful men for money. They make a business out of vice. They are called prostitutes, and their homes brothels. They walk along the streets in the evening and during the night, dressed conspicuously. As a rule, they make a bad impression upon a virtuous young man. They wait for their victims and try to attract them by flattering words. My boy, if they should approach you, be strong. Do not argue with them. They will call the police and accuse you of assault. Flee them. Remember what you owe to yourself. Remember God who sees you and your guardian angel who accompanies you. Think of your pure mother and sister, and consider that the poor wretch who solicits you ought to be a child of God and a daughter of Mary. How criminal would it be if you should drag her still deeper into the mire of sin and should expose your body to the contagion of venereal diseases? To young women, something ought to be said about illegitimate children. It is well to mention how many inexperienced girls have been ruined by men. Attention should be called to the disgrace it brings upon a girl and her family, how it makes a subsequent favorable marriage almost impossible, etc. C. Flirtation and company keeping. This leads naturally to flirtation and company keeping. At first, the real sex matters should be kept in the background because they are still of minor importance in the mind of the boy or girl. With them, it is more the desire for sensation, imitation of others, sociability, and, at least as far as the girl is concerned, a longing for someone who is able and willing to satisfy her whims. It is not necessary to speak softly. An earnest word is in place. Tell the girl that her greatest happiness and her greatest pleasure should consist in spending her youth in modesty. Quite early, the idea of purest virginity may be brought home to the girl without alluding to sex matters. The boy may be told that a longer association with other good boys is needed to develop a manly character, that it is foolish to spend his money in such a way instead of saving for the future. He should be impressed with the fact that shows and movies are not real life and in many cases are a travesty on good living. Eventually, the time will arrive when it will become necessary to speak openly about the whole field of sex life. Today, it is necessary to tell young people plainly never to be alone with the opposite sex, nor ever to allow any approach or action that could not be seen in any decent society. It is well to emphasize the fact that customs are not always in accord with virtue, that others are not a norm for their behavior unless they observe the laws of God. Remind young people of their responsibilities toward each other and how their reticence and modesty will increase their mutual respect and confidence. They will trust each other in whatever company he or she may be. Such remarks will find a fertile soil, especially if the boy has been educated to true knighthood and the girl to pure womanhood. The mother should exercise great care in providing proper clothing. Modest fashions should be recommended not only because the others are immoral, but because they are a disgrace to true womanhood. They do not appeal to modest and good men, but rather to the lustful kind. Moreover, the girl should cultivate the household virtues. A feeling for the weak and helpless, the nursing instinct, a quiet home tasks, homemaking, cooking, a spirit of sacrifice for others, and many more good womanly traits. The more our young women are trained in the virtues of domestic life, the better they will preserve their virginity without becoming timid and impractical. The father should interest his son in the general welfare of the family. He might well induce the son to assume a part in the upkeep of the household and to share with him the acquisition of a useful object. A larger and more comfortable dwelling, an automobile, radio, or in fact anything that will appeal to the boy and in which he may invest his savings as part owner of the property acquired. With young men and boys who have not yet an income of their own and are still attending school, other means must be applied. Spending money should not be given too liberally, and only one of the parents should give it after inquiring for what purpose it is wanted. In case the son can apply to father, mother, and perhaps an older brother or sister, it is not possible to control his spending. Whenever the habit of industry and thrift is created, spending will naturally decrease, soberness will develop, and appreciation of the value of things will be formed. Self-respect will be aroused, and all this will exercise a tremendous influence upon the character and mode of life of the young. It goes without saying that in our days of haste and nervous strain, relaxation in the form of recreation is imperative. An opportunity for proper enjoyment must be provided. If parents cannot provide this themselves, they should at least induce their sons and daughters to join Catholic organizations that promote the spirit of Christian joyfulness. Very rarely should young people be allowed to join neutral or sectarian organizations. These, as a rule, do not provide a congenial and morally healthful atmosphere and are frequently the nearest occasion of contracting mixed marriages with their concomitant evils. The best thermometer for judging the health of the soul is regularity in the reception of the sacraments. D. Venereal diseases. Present-day conditions make it obligatory to warn against the danger of venereal diseases. This may be done as follows. God will sometimes punish sin during lifetime. More than any other vice does he punish the vice of impurity in this manner. There are several loathsome diseases that are caused mostly by immoral living. The worst of these are gonorrhea and syphilis. A very large number of women are infected by the first, which is spread only by sexual intercourse. It brings about horrible sufferings and lifelong disabilities. The poison enters into the fine canals and organs which God created in the woman for the purpose of fulfilling her vocation as a mother. This sickness frequently causes inflammations, which close the canals and thereby prevent the egg from reaching its natural destination. A woman inflicted with this trouble can never thereafter experience the joy of motherhood. Most of the time, several other painful ailments like rheumatism, heart trouble, and kidney trouble accompany gonorrhea. The worst is the fact that even the children, should they be born alive, must suffer for the sins of the mother. Many blind children have lost their eyesight on account of the poison found in the body of the parent. There is no cure for this disease, unless a good physician is consulted in its first stage, and even then a complete cure is not always effected. Syphilis is still a worse infection. It is a horrible disease caused not only by sexual relations, but even by the use of infected towels, utensils, and toilets. Whenever its poison is brought into a wound, a hard knot is formed, scarcely noticeable and often overlooked. After some time it disappears again, and everything seems to be in order. But meanwhile, the poison enters the blood, and after some time, rash appears on the hands and other parts of the body. This is the second stage of the disease. This also may pass away, and a person may appear perfectly healthy for many years. All at once, unusual things happen. One may lift something heavy and the arm breaks. One may make mistakes in business or otherwise that were not considered possible. A physician is consulted, and tests reveal that the sickness has reached the third stage, which is the most horrible and final. The whole organism has become infected, and the largest number of the victims die miserably in insane asylums of paralysis of the brain. Such is the punishment of God for the sins of immorality. Syphilis is incurable, except occasionally during the first stage of infection. How greatly must we be on our guard against the vice of impurity! It ruins the soul as well as the body. It robs young women of their most cherished treasures, grace and beauty. Temptations may grow very strong, but then remember what I have told you. Pray for God's grace, without which we cannot succeed. Be prudent and take me into your confidence. Tell me everything that may worry you, and you will find a friend and adviser in the darkest moments of your life. I am determined to assist you in order that you may retain the most precious gift that a young man or woman can bring into married life, an unspoiled virginity. Rest assured that I have and will show the greatest sympathy for everything that may happen to you. The bridal instruction given to young people by the pastor shortly before the marriage will complete the instructions. Chapter 6. Conclusion. Dear parents, these are the things about which you will have to speak to your growing children. There may be special cases in which, owing to their seriousness, still more information is desirable and needed about abortion, onanism, etc. But this is, as a rule, not necessary with young people who have enjoyed a Christian education. The things that were considered in these pages are serious, very serious. But what has been said was dictated by a genuine love for youth. It is your duty to use what you have read for the benefit of your offspring. Remember that in these matters, it is not possible to act according to a standard program or form. Every case must be treated individually according to its needs, and what one parent may not be able to do may be accomplished by the other. Each one has to feel his way through. In order to do so more easily, it is of the greatest importance that parents themselves have a clear idea of sex matters and become accustomed to look at them with the eyes of God. If they are thus prepared, parents will be able, should the right moment come, perhaps unexpectedly, to master the difficult task of sex education. This accomplished, the child will be definitely benefited for life. The confidence between parent and child will grow, authority will gradually be replaced, the father will become the experienced and trusted friend of his son, and the mother, who knows all and whose counsel is sought and heeded, will be the faithful companion and guide of her daughter. The following story may serve as a fit conclusion. One day a man over 70 years old entered the office of a large educational institution and asked for the director of the sodality. When the priest arrived, the old man related that he had traveled a great distance for but one purpose. He desired to visit the grave of the priest who acted as sodality director 50 years ago. He said that he had come to thank this priest because he had taught him to say every day 3 Hail Marys for the preservation of the virtue of purity. Now as an old man he realized what that had meant for him. Thereafter he was accompanied to the cemetery where, kneeling on the bare ground, he remained for a long time in silent prayer. He rose and went away without saying a single word. May all parents experience the joy and happiness that their children, too, may one day come to their last resting place to thank them on their knees for having been friends and guides to them in the crucial moments of youth. A little more about the author, Father Kilian Hennrich. an in memoriam from a Franciscan publication in 1947. The late Father Kilian Hennrich, Capuchin, November 9th, 1880 to November 26th, 1946. Tuesday morning, November 26th at 10 o'clock, a solemn requiem mass was offered for the repose of the soul of Father Kilian Hennrich, Capuchin. Ailing for many years, Father Kilian had been confined to his room, where he continued to study and write. Though constantly under the monastery's physician's care, about 2 weeks ago he was obliged to go to St. Vincent's Hospital, New York. 1 week later, a paralytic stroke robbed him of his consciousness, which lasted till Saturday, November 23rd, when at 3:15 a.m. he died. Father Kilian had been known chiefly for his youth work and for his deep interest in the Third Order of St. Francis. His contacts were nationwide and to some extent worldwide. Born at Leeuwarden, Holland, on November 9th, 1880, he came to America as a young student with the intention of becoming a priest in the Capuchin Franciscan province of St. Joseph. He studied at St. Lawrence College, Mount Calvary, Wisconsin, and began his Capuchin novitiate at St. Bonaventure's Monastery, Detroit, Michigan, on July 14, 1904. The seminary studies were made at St. Francis Monastery in Milwaukee, where Father Kilian was ordained to the priesthood on July 11, 1911. His priestly career began in Milwaukee. In 1913, he was assigned to Sacred Heart Friary in Yonkers, New York, and shortly after, the superiors sent him to St. John's Church, 210 West 31st Street, New York. Here, his interest in the Catholic Boys' Brigade began. In 1924, Father Kilian was transferred to Our Lady of Sorrows Friary, where his work in behalf of the Third Order of St. Francis reached greater proportions. Boys' work was Father Kilian's particular field, to which he dedicated his time and talent. He studied youth's problems from every angle and was one of the most outstanding authorities on youth guidance in the country. A tireless writer, Father Kilian has left many works that have had nationwide circulation. Among the chief works on youth are Boy Guidance, Boys Leader Primer, Seraphic Youth, Watchful Elders, Play Guidance, Youth Guidance, etc. His numerous articles have appeared in the Homiletic and Pastoral Review, in the Commonweal, in the Ecclesiastical Review, the Catholic School Journal, the Franciscan Herald and Forum, and in the Franciscan Studies. Interested also in spreading Franciscan ideals, Father Kilian was for many years a zealous director of the Third Order fraternities. He not only preached, but also wrote on the timeliness of the Third Order of St. Francis among the laity. Outstanding among his tertiary writings are his New Life, Seraphic Youth Companion, Seraphic Youth, The Better Life, and others. His last book was Forming a Christian Mentality, which was published in 1945. No doubt these many works will continue the apostolate of Father Kilian. He will be remembered for many years to come as a Capuchin friar dedicated to the betterment of youth and to the promotion of the ideals of St. Francis in social life. This from Our Lady of Sorrows, New York, Father Marcellus Manzo, Capuchin. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.